The airport was alive with the usual hustle and bustle of a Friday morning. Los Angeles International, a place where people hurried toward destinations, each carrying their own stories. Among them was Victor Collins, a 44-year-old tech mogul. His polished leather shoes clicked sharply against the tiled floor, his perfectly tailored suit and sleek leather briefcase broadcasting success to anyone who glanced his way. But Victor wasn't in a hurry because he wanted to be. His schedule, packed with meetings and deadlines, left little room for reflection, yet his mind had been restless for months. Beneath the polished exterior lay a gnawing emptiness. His gold watch gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, but no amount of wealth could hide the hollow ache in his chest. Then it happened. He saw her. She moved through the crowd gracefully, her long brown hair brushing over her shoulders. She was holding the hand of a boy, no older than 11, who walked beside her with an energy that seemed to light up the terminal. The boy's laughter rang out, clear and bright, cutting through the ambient noise of boarding calls and rolling luggage. Victor froze mid-step. The briefcase nearly slipped from his grasp. His breath caught as his gaze locked onto the boy. The resemblance was undeniable. It was like staring into a mirror of the past. The boy had the same piercing green eyes, the same dark, wavy hair that Victor himself had as a child. Even the way he moved, the slight bounce in his step, was achingly familiar. And the woman, could it be? His heart raced as recognition dawned on him. It was Emma. Emma, the woman he had abandoned 11 years ago without so much as a proper goodbye. Victor stood rooted to the spot, his pulse pounding in his ears as memories he'd buried long ago came rushing back. The nights spent dreaming together, the way Emma's laughter could fill a room, and the cold morning he walked away from it all. Now here she was, not alone, with him. A boy who looked so much like Victor it made his chest tighten painfully. Was this his son? He didn't know how long he stood there, the chaos of the airport swirling around him. All Victor could feel was the weight of a question that threatened to crush him. What had he done? 11 years earlier, Victor Collins was not the powerful tech mogul the world would come to know. He was just a struggling programmer with a laptop that overheated too often and dreams so big they left little room for reality. His apartment in Pasadena was cramped, its peeling paint and second-hand furniture a constant reminder of how far he still had to go. But there was Emma. Emma was the kind of woman who saw beauty in the simplest things. She could turn an old coffee mug into a flower vase, or a blank canvas into a masterpiece. A gifted artist, her fingers were often stained with paint, her eyes always alight with creative ideas. Emma believed in Victor, even when he didn't believe in himself. When Victor spoke of his plans to create groundbreaking software, she listened like every word was poetry. She was his cheerleader, his rock, the person who always reminded him of what he was capable of. But dreams have a cost. Victor's ambition began to consume him. Late nights coding turned into endless hours researching how to break into the tech industry. Emma, who once dreamed of opening her own gallery, put her aspirations on hold to support his. She took on extra shifts at the local art supply store to help pay their bills, sacrificing her time and her dreams to ensure Victor could chase his. And Victor? He began to resent the smallness of their life. The old car that sputtered when it started, the dinners made from whatever was cheapest at the grocery store, the simplicity that Emma cherished, felt suffocating to him. Then came Vanessa. Vanessa Green was everything their life wasn't: polished, glamorous, and dripping with success. She was an influential investor who entered Victor's world like a whirlwind. They met at a tech conference where Victor was presenting his software. She saw potential in his work, and in him. "You're wasting your time living small," Vanessa told him over drinks one evening. "You could have everything: money, power, recognition. But you need the right people to help you get there." Her words ignited something in Victor. She painted a vision of a life filled with luxury and limitless opportunity. A life so far removed from his cramped apartment and quiet nights with Emma. The more Vanessa spoke of what could be, the more Victor found himself comparing it to what he had. Emma wanted stability. Victor wanted more. The tension between them grew. Emma didn't understand why Victor couldn't be happy with the life they were building. "Why do you need more?" she would ask, her voice tinged with both confusion and hurt. "Aren't we enough?" But to Victor, it wasn't enough. One chilly evening, after another argument about their future, Victor made his decision. As Emma slept, he packed a suitcase in silence. On the kitchen counter, he left a note. "Emma, I can't keep living like this. I need more from life than this small existence can give me. Please, don't try to find me." Victor. As he walked out of the apartment, Victor didn't look back. He boarded a plane the next morning, heading for the life Vanessa had promised him. But he didn't know, what would haunt him for years to come, was that Emma discovered she was pregnant just days later. Alone and heartbroken, she clutched the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. The life she thought they were building together had crumbled. Now it was just her and the tiny life growing inside her. Victor's dreams took off, but they came at a cost he would only realize much later. Victor stood frozen in the middle of Los Angeles International Airport, the chaos of rushing travelers swirling around him. But he didn't hear any of it. All he could see was Emma and the boy, his son. A son he had abandoned before he even knew of his existence. The realization hit him like a freight train, his chest tightening as if the air had been stolen from the room. The boy's face was a mirror of Victor's younger self, from his sharp green eyes to the way he tilted his head as he laughed at something Emma had said. A flash of guilt burned through him. What kind of man leaves his wife? What kind of man leaves his child? His flight was boarding, but Victor didn't move. His perfectly planned day, another business trip, another deal to close, suddenly felt meaningless. As the intercom called for the final passengers to board, Victor turned and walked in the opposite direction. He didn't even know where he was going at first. His legs moved on their own, carrying him through the terminal, until he found himself in an airport cafe. He sat at a table by the window, his mind racing with memories of Emma, the life they once had, and the devastating note he'd left behind. Victor couldn't shake the image of the boy, the laughter, the resemblance. He needed to know the truth, and more than that, he needed to make things right, no matter what it took. Pulling out his phone, Victor hesitated for only a moment before dialing a familiar number. It was Jake, an old friend who had transitioned from corporate security to private investigations. "Jake, it's Victor. I need your help," Victor said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I need you to find someone." Over the next few days, Victor waited anxiously for Jake's report, his stomach churning with a mix of fear and hope. He barely slept, haunted by questions. Was the boy really his son? What kind of life had Emma built without him, and what would she say if he showed up after all these years? When Jake finally called, Victor's heart pounded as he answered. "She's still in Pasadena," Jake began. "Lives in the same neighborhood you two shared back then. She's working as an art teacher at the local community center. And..." Jake paused, as if bracing Victor for the blow. "She has a son. His name's Ryan. He's 11 years old." The confirmation knocked the wind out of Victor. 11 years, the exact amount of time since he had walked out of that apartment. Victor gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. "And the boy?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Jake's tone softened. "He's yours, Vic. There's no doubt about it." For a moment, Victor couldn't speak. The weight of what he'd done, The years he'd missed, the milestones he'd never been part of, threatened to crush him. He'd abandoned not just a wife, but a son. A boy who had grown up without his father because of Victor's selfishness. But beneath the guilt was something else, a flicker of resolve. Victor knew he couldn't undo the past. He couldn't rewrite the years he'd stolen from Emma and Ryan. But he could try to make amends. He could try to find his way back into their lives. His mission was clear now, as clear as the reflection of the boy in his own eyes. Victor would stop at nothing to earn a second chance. Victor sat in his car, parked a few houses down from Emma's modest home in Pasadena. The engine hummed softly, but his heart pounded louder. The house hadn't changed much. A swing in the front yard, flowers blooming unevenly along the porch. It looked lived in, warm, happy. He swallowed hard. With trembling hands, Victor opened the car door and stepped out. His polished shoes crunched against the gravel driveway as he approached the door. He hesitated for a moment, hand poised to knock. His mind raced. What could he say? How could he even begin to explain himself? Before he could overthink it, he rapped on the door. It opened almost instantly, as if Emma had been standing just behind it. When their eyes met, the color drained from Emma's face. She froze, her hand tightening on the doorframe, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. "Victor?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, then louder, sharper. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was a mixture of shock, anger, and something Victor couldn't quite place. Pain. He began, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat, trying again. "Emma, I had to see you. I needed to..." "To what?" she interrupted, her tone rising. "Explain yourself? Apologize? After 11 years? Victor flinched as if her words had physically struck him. "Emma, he stammered, searching for the right words, but nothing seemed enough. Her eyes narrowed, blazing with the fire of a decade's worth of unresolved hurt. "You think you can just show up after all this time and what? Expect forgiveness? You left us, Victor. Do you even know what you did to me? To us?" Before Victor could answer, a small voice called from inside the house. "Mom, who's at the door?" Victor's heart stopped. "Ryan." The boy appeared, peering curiously from behind the curtain in the living room. His green eyes, so familiar, locked on Victor's. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Emma stepped into Victor's line of sight, shielding Ryan with her body. Her protective stance spoke volumes. "Stay away from him," she said through clenched teeth. "He doesn't need you. He has a good life, a stable life, and I won't let you ruin it." Victor's chest tightened. "Emma, please. I just want to talk, to explain, to see him." She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "No, Victor. You lost that right the day you walked out on us, the day you chose yourself over your family." Her words pierced through him, sharp and unrelenting. "Emma, But she didn't let him finish. With a trembling hand, she pushed the door shut. "Leave," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't come back." The door clicked shut, leaving Victor standing alone on the porch, staring at the wood grain as if it held answers. His legs felt heavy, his chest hollow. He glanced back at the window where Ryan had stood, but the curtain had fallen back into place. Victor turned and walked back to his car, the weight of Emma's words crushing him. He had seen his son, been mere feet away from him, yet he felt further away than ever. Sitting in his car, Victor gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had come here hoping to mend what had broken, but Emma's anger was a stark reminder of the damage he had caused. For the first time in years, Victor allowed himself to feel the full weight of his guilt. And for the first time, he understood. Redemption would not come easily, if it came at all. Victor hadn't expected Emma to let him get anywhere near Ryan, Her anger was palpable, her protective instincts fierce. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A week after the disastrous encounter at her doorstep, Victor found himself walking along a quiet park trail in Pasadena. He had no particular destination, just the need to clear his head. The weight of his crumbled empire, his mistakes, and the lives he had hurt sat heavy on his shoulders. Then he saw him. Ryan was playing soccer on a patchy field, kicking the ball with another boy his age. His laughter rang out, carefree and light, and for a moment Victor's heart swelled. That was his son. His son. Victor hesitated, unsure if he should approach. But as the other boy ran off toward a nearby bench, Ryan was left alone, chasing the ball as it rolled off the field and toward the trail. The moment presented itself. "Hey," Victor said gently, picking up the ball before it rolled too far. He stepped onto the grass and held it out. Ryan froze, looking up at him with wide green eyes. "Thanks," he said cautiously, taking the ball but not moving closer. Victor smiled, unsure of what to say. "You've got a good kick," he offered. "I used to play soccer when I was your age." Ryan stared at him for a moment as if trying to decide whether to believe him. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Victor said, crouching slightly to meet his gaze. "I wasn't as good as you, though. That was a solid shot." A small smile flickered across Ryan's face before he quickly masked it with a more neutral expression. "Thanks, I guess." Victor took a step back, sensing Ryan's unease. "I don't want to bother you," he said quietly, "but He stopped himself. There were so many things he wanted to say, but he didn't know where to start. Ryan tilted his head. "But what?" Victor took a deep breath. "I just wanted to see how you were doing, that's all." Ryan shrugged, still cautious. "I'm fine." Wasn't much, but it was more than Victor had expected. "Good," he said, standing up straight. "I'm glad." The interaction was brief, but it left Victor hopeful. He could see the curiosity in Ryan's eyes, the way the boy lingered just a little longer before running back to the field. Over the next few weeks, Victor made a point to be present without pushing too hard. He showed up at the park, not to intrude, but just to watch Ryan play. Sometimes he brought a book to read on a bench nearby. Other times, he'd cheer lightly from a distance when Ryan made a good shot. Eventually, Ryan began to approach him. The conversations were short at first, filled with hesitant questions and long pauses. But gradually they grew longer. Victor told Ryan about his childhood, about the times he spent playing soccer in the same kind of parks. He shared stories of the mistakes he had made, always careful to frame them honestly but age-appropriately. Ryan listened intently, his defenses lowering bit by bit. One afternoon, as they passed a soccer ball back and forth, Ryan finally asked the question Victor had been dreading. "Why did you leave us?" The ball stopped at Victor's feet and his heart sank. He knelt down, meeting Ryan's gaze directly. "I was selfish and scared," Victor said, his voice steady but filled with regret. "I thought chasing success would make me happy, but I was wrong. I hurt your mom, and I hurt you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Ryan's eyes narrowed, his lips pressing into a thin line. "That's not a very good excuse." Victor nodded. "You're right. It's not. And I'm not asking you to forgive me, Ryan. I just want you to know the truth." For a moment, Ryan didn't say anything. Then he picked up the ball and turned back toward the field. "I've got practice tomorrow," he said over his shoulder. Victor watched him go, a flicker of hope blooming in his chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. And for Victor, that was enough to keep going. Vanessa Green was no stranger to ambition, nor was she unfamiliar with betrayal. A sharp, calculating woman, she had been the architect behind much of Victor's success. She had brought him into her world of power and luxury, taught him how to navigate its intricacies, and turned him into the tech titan the world admired. But loyalty, in Vanessa's eyes, was conditional, and Victor's recent behavior was setting off alarms. At first it was the missed calls, then the canceled meetings. Vanessa brushed it off initially. Victor was known to bury himself in work when dealing with stress, but his absence at the crucial airport meeting was the last straw. Curious, Vanessa began digging. She called contacts at the airport under the guise of confirming logistics for their missed flight. A friend in security sent over grainy surveillance footage of Victor standing motionless near a gate, staring after a woman and a boy. Vanessa squinted at the image. A woman with long brown hair, a boy with green eyes who looked strangely familiar. The realization hit her like a cold slap. Emma. Vanessa had known about Emma, of course. Victor had mentioned her once in the early days of their partnership in passing. "My ex-wife," he'd said dismissively. "It didn't work out." But Vanessa had never imagined Emma would resurface, let alone with a child who bore such a striking resemblance to Victor. Fury bubbled beneath Vanessa's composed exterior. She had spent years building Victor into the man he was. She had invested time, resources, and effort to shape his career, ensuring that he never looked back at the life he had left behind. And now this woman, this relic of his past, threatened to undo everything. Vanessa hired her own investigator. Within days, she had a full report in her hands. Emma still lived in Pasadena, working as an art teacher. The boy, Ryan, was 11 years old. The math didn't lie. Victor had a son, and he had never told her. Vanessa's grip on the report tightened as she read the details. It wasn't just the fact that Victor had a son. It was the realization that his recent behavior, his unexplained absences, were all because of them. He was trying to reconnect with Emma and the boy. Anger turned into icy resolve. "If he thinks he can throw away everything I've built for him to play happy family, he's wrong," Vanessa muttered to herself, pacing the length of her luxurious office. Vanessa didn't just know Victor's strengths, she knew his weaknesses. She had covered for him countless times, swept his missteps under the rug, and ensured that his reputation remained spotless. But now, those very secrets would become her weapon. She reached for her phone, dialing a familiar number. "It's Vanessa," she said curtly. "I need you to dig deeper into Victor's business dealings. Every deal, every contract, every misstep, leave nothing out, and prepare a press release." "Anything specific you're looking for?" her contact asked. Vanessa's voice was cold. "Anything that will destroy him." The person on the other end hesitated. "You're sure about this?" Vanessa's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I don't just want to take him down. I want to make sure he can never recover." Hanging up, Vanessa turned to the city skyline outside her window. She wasn't just seeking revenge. She was sending a message. Victor Collins had crossed the wrong person, and she would make sure the world knew it. And as Vanessa set her plan into motion, Victor had no idea the storm that was about to engulf him. Late one night, Victor's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Bleary-eyed, he glanced at the screen to find his name plastered across every major news outlet. Victor Collins, tech titan or fraud. The headlines screamed scandal. Details of under-the-table deals, questionable contracts, and unethical business practices were laid bare for the world to see. Vanessa had leaked everything. Victor's stomach churned as he scrolled through the articles. Every secret he had hidden to achieve his meteoric rise was now public knowledge. Calls poured in from investors, board members, and journalists, all demanding answers. By morning, his office was in chaos. Lawyers scrambled to contain the fallout, but the damage was done. As Victor sat alone in his once grand corner office, Staring at the city skyline, he felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. The empire he had built, the one he had abandoned Emma and their unborn child for, was crumbling beneath him. It wasn't just his reputation on the line. Investigations were launched. Legal action loomed. The possibility of prison hung over him like a dark cloud. Victor had always prided himself on his ability to outmaneuver any challenge. But this time, there was no escaping, and for the first time in years, he didn't want to escape. On a chilly evening, Victor called a press conference. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as he stepped onto the stage. He looked tired, his usual polished demeanor replaced by a man who had finally been broken. He took a deep breath and gripped the podium. "I built my empire on lies," Victor began, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. "For years, I chased success at any cost, ignoring the harm I caused along the way. Today, I am taking responsibility for my actions." Gasps rippled through the room, followed by a flurry of questions. Victor raised his hand to silence them. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I will face the consequences of my choices, whatever they may be. It's time to own up to my mistakes." The confession sent shockwaves through the industry. Within hours, Victor's assets were frozen, his partnerships dissolved, and his name became synonymous with disgrace. Sitting in his now empty penthouse, Victor stared at the city lights, his mind swirling with regret. He had lost everything: his fortune, his power, his reputation. But for all the material things that had slipped through his fingers, one goal remained: to reconnect with the family he had left behind. Victor knew the road ahead would be long and grueling, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, by facing his failures head-on, he could find a way to make things right, even if it meant starting from nothing. The courtroom was silent as the judge's gavel echoed, sealing Victor's fate. 2 years in federal prison, the judge announced. The weight of the words hung heavy in the air, but Victor didn't flinch. He stood tall, shoulders squared, as if welcoming the sentence. He knew it was deserved. Reporters outside the courthouse swarmed like vultures, shouting questions about the fallen tech tycoon. Victor ignored them, his mind focused on one thing: redemption. His empire was gone, his reputation shattered, but for the first time in years, he felt a strange sense of peace. This was his chance to make things right, not with the world, but with the people who mattered most. Prison was nothing like the life Victor had known. Gone were the tailored suits and corner offices, replaced by gray jumpsuits and stark walls. The days were long and monotonous, but Victor quickly realized this was the opportunity he needed to confront his past. He started small. A conversation with a young inmate struggling to adjust turned into a mentorship. Victor found himself teaching basic business skills to others who had lost their way, helping them imagine a future beyond the prison walls. The act of giving back sparked something in him, a reminder of the man he once aspired to be. Victor also dove into self-improvement, spending hours in the prison library. He devoured books on ethics and leadership, reflecting on the choices that had led him there. Late at night, he would sketch out plans for a nonprofit organization to support small businesses, hoping to one day use his skills to help others build something honest and meaningful. Emma was hesitant when she received Victor's first letter from prison. In it, he didn't ask for forgiveness or pity. He simply expressed his gratitude for allowing him to see Ryan, even briefly, and acknowledge the pain he had caused. "I know I can never undo the past," the letter read, "but I'm trying to be better. For him, for you, for myself." The sincerity in his words struck a chord. Against her better judgment, Emma decided to let Ryan visit his father. The first visit was awkward. Ryan sat across the table from Victor, his arms crossed and his expression guarded. Victor, dressed in his prison uniform, looked smaller than Ryan remembered, as if the weight of his guilt had physically diminished him. "How's school?" Victor asked, his voice tentative. Ryan shrugged. "It's fine." Long silences filled the room, broken only by the occasional clink of a guard's keys or the murmur of other visitors. But Victor didn't push. He let Ryan take the lead, offering quiet support and answering questions when they came. Over time, the visits became more comfortable. Ryan began to ask about Victor's life in prison, about his work with other inmates. "Why are you helping them?" Ryan asked one day, his curiosity genuine. "Because I wish someone had helped me when I was their age," Victor replied honestly. Ryan's defenses began to lower. He started sharing stories about school, soccer practice, and even his struggles with math. Victor listened intently, offering encouragement and advice. "I had trouble with math too," Victor admitted during one visit. "But I had a great teacher, your mom. She always believed I could do better, even when I didn't." Ryan smiled at the mention of Emma, and for the first time, Victor felt a sliver of hope. Meanwhile, Emma's life had found stability with Lucas, her supportive boyfriend of several years. Lucas, with his kind eyes and steady presence, had become a father figure to Ryan, attending his soccer games and helping him with homework. Emma watched the bond between Ryan and Victor develop with cautious optimism. She still harbored pain from the past, but seeing Victor's efforts to change softened something in her. She didn't fully trust him, not yet, but she began to see glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. As Victor approached the end of his sentence, his resolve grew stronger. He wrote Emma another letter, thanking her for allowing Ryan to visit and expressing his commitment to being a better father. "No, I can never replace Lucas," he wrote, "and I wouldn't want to. He's been there for Ryan in ways I never was. But if there's a place for me in Ryan's life, even a small one, I'll spend the rest of my days earning it." Emma folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. She didn't respond, but her heart was beginning to heal, piece by piece. Victor's time in prison wasn't easy, but it changed him by the time he walked out of those gates. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Victor felt ready to face it. He had lost everything he once thought mattered, but he had gained something far more valuable: a second chance to be a father. Victor stood outside the gates of the prison, the cold morning air brushing against his face. The world beyond felt almost foreign, open, vast, and full of possibility. He gripped the small bag of belongings in his hand, a lifetime reduced to a few essentials. But as daunting as this new beginning seemed, he knew one thing for certain: he would not waste the second chance he'd been given. His first step was to make good on a promise he had made to himself. With the support of a few contacts he'd maintained, Victor joined a nonprofit dedicated to empowering underprivileged youth through technology. He spent his days teaching coding classes, mentoring teenagers, and helping them see the potential in themselves that he had once squandered. Victor threw himself into the work. It was humbling but fulfilling. For the first time in years, his knowledge and skills were being used for something honest, something meaningful. And every time he saw a young person succeed, he felt a flicker of hope that he was doing something right. Meanwhile, Emma's life continued steadily with Lucas. They were married now, a quiet ceremony that celebrated the stability and love they had built together. Lucas was more than just a husband. He was a pillar for Emma and Ryan, providing the support and consistency they had both needed after years of uncertainty. Emma allowed Victor back into Ryan's life, but with clear boundaries. She made it clear that trust was something that had to be earned, not assumed. Victor respected her conditions, understanding the fragility of the dynamic they were building. Victor's relationship with Ryan was slow to blossom, but deeply rewarding. Their meetings were occasional at first: soccer games, casual dinners, or a shared project at the nonprofit where Victor worked. Victor never overstepped, allowing Ryan to dictate the pace of their growing bond. One afternoon, Ryan asked Victor to help him with a science project. As they tinkered with circuits and coding, Victor found himself marveling at how much Ryan had grown, not just physically but emotionally. The boy who had once met him with wary eyes now asked questions with genuine curiosity, laughed freely, and even shared his frustrations about school. "Thanks, Dad," Ryan said casually one day, catching Victor off guard. Victor froze, the words sinking in. A lump rose in his throat, but he kept his voice steady. "Anytime, son," he replied, a quiet warmth spreading through his chest. Years passed and Victor's life settled into its new rhythm. He lived modestly, his days filled with purpose and gratitude. His work with the nonprofit grew, and he became a trusted mentor for young people looking to turn their lives around. But his proudest moment came on a sunny afternoon in a crowded auditorium. Ryan's high school graduation was a milestone Victor had once thought he'd never be part of. He sat quietly in the back row, watching as Ryan crossed the stage to accept his diploma. Emma and Lucas sat nearer the front, beaming with pride. And Victor didn't mind. Being there at all was enough. As the ceremony neared its end, Ryan stepped up to the podium to deliver his speech as class president. "Today isn't just about the graduates," Ryan began, his voice steady and confident. "It's about the people who believed in us, our teachers, our friends, and our families. I want to thank all the people who believed in me, even when they didn't believe in themselves." Victor's breath caught. He knew those words were meant for him. Tears welled in his eyes as he watched his son speak with poise and passion. After the ceremony, Ryan found Victor lingering outside the auditorium. "Hey," he said, holding out his diploma. "This is for you too. I wouldn't have made it here without you." Victor smiled, his voice thick with emotion. "No, Ryan, that's all you. I'm just lucky to have been part of the journey." They hugged, a genuine, heartfelt embrace that spoke of forgiveness, understanding, and love. Life wasn't perfect, and Victor knew it never would be. There were still moments of doubt, flashes of regret for the years he had lost. But as he watched Ryan step confidently into his future, surrounded by the love of Emma and Lucas, he knew he had done something right. Victor had learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about facing it, owning it, and using it to build something better. And for the first time in years, Victor felt truly at peace. Victor's story is more than just a tale of redemption. It's a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love, accountability, and second chances. From the glittering heights of success to the humbling depths of loss, Victor's journey is a testament to the truth that redemption is never easy. It demands honesty, courage, and the willingness to confront the pain we've caused, not just in others but also in ourselves. For Victor, the cost was great. His empire crumbled, his reputation shattered, and he faced years of estrangement from the family he once abandoned. But what his story teaches us is that the value of redemption isn't in regaining what was lost. It's in discovering what truly matters. Victor's life wasn't rebuilt with wealth or power. It was rebuilt through the trust of a son who slowly opened his heart, the grace of a woman who allowed him to step back into their lives, and the hard work of turning his skills toward helping others. It's a story of choosing to do what's right, even when the road ahead is uncertain and the reward is not guaranteed. In the end, Victor's journey asks us all to reflect. What truly defines success? Is it the material achievements we chase, or the love and connections we nurture along the way? Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If Victor's story moved you, let it serve as a reminder to cherish the people who stand by you, even during your darkest times. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in Victor's shoes, what would you have done differently? What lessons resonated with you the most? Please like this video if it touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a little inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the beauty and complexity of the human experience. We can't wait to see you in the next story. Until then, thank you for being part of our storytelling family.